Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Wednesday edition of The Warning. It's a great pleasure and a privilege tonight to be able to introduce all of you to Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion, the strategic grandmaster, one of humanity's great champions of freedom, free thinking, and apostle of human rights. And so it's said that in an average lifetime, that each of us on average will meet 10,000 people. And that's what an average person in an average lifetime will meet 10,000 people. And so tonight, a couple thousand of us will be together, and a great privilege to introduce one of the most exceptional people on the planet, and for us to be able to have a discussion about this moment, about the crisis, about the nature of the crisis, and about the strategy of how to navigate through it. And so, welcome, Garry Kasparov. And let me start out by just asking you to explain the mission of the next move and to tell everybody who's listening where they can find you and what the mission of that publication is, which I think is essential reading.
Steve, thank you very much for having me here and for mentioning the next move. Is a Substack that I started with my organization, the Renew Democracy Initiative. The bottom line is very simple. The idea of the next move is to lay down a strategy, actually to discuss a strategy. And the motto of our publication is stop whining, start winning. It's time to understand the nature of the crisis, why we're in the midst of such a crisis, not just domestic, but international, and how we can get out of here. And it's not just, just simply criticizing Trump and Trump cronies, but understanding the nature of the threat, which I believe is an existential threat to the American Republic and democracy worldwide, but also finding, resources, finding concepts and strategy, how to, build something more adequate, how to adjust American democracy, American Republic to the realities of the 21st century.
So let's get into it straight away and talk about strategy. Let's start with what is strategy?
It's very easy to mix strategy and tactics. So in one of my books, How Life Imitated Chess, I tried to come up with something, quite unconventional. I said, tactics is knowing what to do when there is something to do. Strategy is knowing what to do when there is nothing to do. Of course, it's kind of an exaggeration. But basically, strategy is, according to the thinkers, strategic thinkers, it's about the impact of your actions today. So how the future will respond to your actions today. And strategy is something that, you just have to, lay down and then to use tactical tools to support it. So again, this is from the times of Sun Tzu. So this is ancient China. So the distinction between strategy and tactics was a fundamental element of a successful decision makers, because it's so easy to call whatever you do strategy without actually laying down a proper strategy that could dramatically improve your chance for success. And I think now we're at the point where just instead of these tactical skirmishes and saying, okay, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, there are too many things that we can say. We concentrate on something which is more strategic, because it's about winning. And winning doesn't mean that we can get everything we want. Winning is, let me use the chess analogy, it's basically to solving the most important problem. And when your king in game of chess is under the threat of being mated, you don't think about long-term impacts, in the end game. So it's right now, you have to make sure that you defend your position and build the foundation for future attack.
So let me lay out a couple of things. And if there's any premise garbage in, garbage out. Any garbage that I put into my premise, I want you to call me out on it. But this is how I see the situation, and I think it starts with being able to observe and orient to the precise moment, this moment in time, in space, what's happening, and what is the meaning of it, and what is to be done about it. And so in any situation, the aggressor, by nature of being the aggressor, has first mover advantage against the side of the proposition that does not want to be in a fight, but has had a fight brought to them that requires standing up lest something very valuable be lost, right? So in this moment, how do you assess the strategic situation? Do you agree that Trump has the first mover advantage, has the aggressor advantage, that the opposition, such as it is, if it exists at all, if it exists in a nascent state, an unformed state, there's certainly a lot of organic protests going on out across the country, but unharnessed. How do you assess this moment and the status of Trump's aggression, which I imagine you consider to be increasing and building on a constant basis, on a daily basis, as we get deeper and deeper into this? That the situation on a constant basis isn't static, it's deteriorating.
Um, yeah, I may differ with you here because I think the idea of Trump being an aggressor and making the first move, again, using chess analogy, could apply to his first term. But he is back. So I think we should understand why the person with so many flaws, and I'm trying to be diplomatic, with so many flaws that everybody was aware of, succeeded in rallying more than half of Americans behind him second time. And actually, his second performance in elections was even better than the first one. So that tells us that the conditions, were nearly perfect for him. And how come? It means the opposition, actually at that time, not opposition, but those in power, created these conditions for him, were a lot of people. And with no doubt that Trump's core support, the MAGA support, I don't know, you are much better expert on this field, but I would be very surprised if it was more than 30%. A lot of people voted for Trump because the rest was worse. So we should take into account that right now he's there because many policies that he advocated, not intending to carry through, but advocating for and being associated with, they have been neglected by Democrats, by Biden administration, by Harris campaign, and by Democratic Party at large. So it's very important for us to actually to analyze the reasons of Trump's comeback, and also to understand how we can fight back by creating a coalition, a big tent. So to recognize that we can't attack, just on the whole front. So we have to pick up the directions. Ideal is just, you find the weakest spot in Trump's, call it political armor, his shield, and we attack there. And I think this is not about Trump's policies, though we may disagree with many. I think it's more likely about the tools he has been using. That's where we can build a coalition. And that's of defending Constitution. The tools that Trump has been using, the political machinations, most of them are totally unconstitutional. So it's not, wasting our energy or investing our energy, just apology, debating what Doge did here and there, cut these funds or abolished another agency. Yes, I disagree with many things they have been doing. But the key is that Doge is unconstitutional. Let's not, here we are in agreement. Let's not them to dictate the narrative. Because the moment you start debating the policies, we are in a very slippery ground. Because immigration, yes, a lot of people agree with Trump. Cutting the budget, yes, bloated bureaucracy. So let's not debate things where we cannot build a coalition that will force many hesitant Republicans to shift their sides or to depart Trump. Let's concentrate on something where many people agree. The actions of this administration are, in many instances, simply unconstitutional. And defending Constitution, I think, will create a very powerful thrust that will penetrate Trump's defense shield.
Okay, so I want to kind of break apart the analysis. I want to play devil's advocate. So when I listen to you, I agree with you substantially and largely. But if we're sitting around in a room, there are going to be two arguments that are put forward on the table, and I want you to take them spot on, right? And the first one is that looking backwards and deeply understanding the reason why Donald Trump won is a waste of time. Is that we are where we are, and that for me, right, this notion that each day is a new episode of a reality show that's completely disconnected, severed from the day before is both delusional and nonsensical, and part of the reason we have arrived at this moment. But what do you say to the necessity of understanding the reason for the loss? And I can explain it in 30 seconds, and I have no hypocrisy on this issue because I called for Biden to be a one-term president. I look clearly at what I saw and say he's not capable of doing this, that there's a disaster. I said in 2022, a rematch between the two would be a national catastrophe. And what happened right at the core level is Joe Biden used the threat of Donald Trump to justify his candidacy at age 78, saying, I'm the only candidate who can beat him because I beat him once before. And any talk of me not running again is dangerous, and it helps Donald Trump, when in fact, Donald Trump beat the only candidate who the Democrats nominated who could conceivably have lost to him. And the Democratic Party lost on fundamental questions of honesty to the most prolific liar in American history. Honesty about the economy, honesty about the border, honesty about Biden's fitness. And everybody got in line with the lie rather than speak truth to power against the interests of the American people. So I think it's essential to confront that, because you have to sever that baggage, right, that dishonesty, cast it into the deep, dark ocean, right, have a funeral for it, and move forward into the sunlight of a new day. But you have to have the funeral first, and you have to acknowledge how it is you lost a campaign to the greatest liar in American history on questions of honesty. So just as a strategic matter, what do you say to the people who say we are wrong in looking back, or right, that say I'm crazy for saying that this has to be addressed as a fundamental issue moving forward that requires, in the end, what's a character test for people who want to lead, to tell the American people the truth, even if it indicts the self-interest of their colleagues and friends?
Here we're in total agreement, because okay, chess player is speaking. You can't lay down the strategy. You can't work it out unless you understand why you lost. Recognizing your shortcomings, the wrong moves you made. In our case, it's not our moves, but the moves made by those who were leading on our side. So it's absolutely fundamental. It's paramount to move into the future. And again, it was Trump's second victory. He was coming back. And you're absolutely right. Trump was beatable. And contrary to what Biden was trying to tell us, or actually the cohort surrounding him trying to tell us, it was the opposite. Biden won because he was not Trump, and as a one-term president, his only the only real goal of his presidency was to save us from Donald Trump, so to offer us normalization. So instead, I think he pushed too far to the left. But the worst thing he did, actually, he didn't, is not to step down and let Democratic Party to have normal primaries, because I think that's why Trump won the nomination. Because the best argument Nikki Haley could use against him, she tried, that Trump was not unelectable. And he was losing against any Democratic candidate but Biden. And or just in this case, it was Kamala Harris, same story. So he would have lost, and he would be in a very weak position against any Democrat who would go through the normal primary process. But because of Biden's was standing there, so actually, or sitting there, just taking this spot, Trump could resist this Nikki Haley's argument, and it didn't work out because for a lot of people, but Biden was beatable. And then, of course, when Biden, everybody knew Biden couldn't run. I think there was another big mistake. I think Democrats had no other choice but to go for open convention, because to fight Trump, they had to gain momentum. They had to rally energy. Whoever wins open convention, I know it's chaotic. You can't predict it, but that's how you show connections with American people. Trump was very successful by presenting his connections with American people, as real, while the Democrats tried to do everything behind closed doors. Of course, we knew Trump was lying, but unfortunately, the alternative to Trump's lies was something so opaque, so unconvincing, that a lot of people scratched their heads, holding their nose, but said, "Okay, let's see Trump. What could happen with Trump?" Now they are probably sorry for their choice, but unfortunately, back then in November, a lot of them, saw that Democrats in the current shape and form were not a good alternative to Trump.
Let's talk about the other issue, right, that people would say around this table, right, about not really needing to look back and to really be accountable, right, for what happened in 2024, be forthright about it, to move forward and talk about the economy. And so on the question of the economy, what I believe is happening, and I'm convinced I'll be right, and you can dissuade me if you think I'm going to be wrong, but what Donald Trump has set in motion can no more be stopped than the mudslide down a California mountain or an avalanche down a Himalayan peak. That the consequences of everything have a gravity and a momentum, and they will have a crushing effect on the middle class American consumer. And so there will be this duality of the Qatari $400 million jet. I have no doubt that somebody will be donating a presidential yacht of some stupendous dimensions, but the gift doors are open. The economy will be crushed. More and more people who are crushed will find themselves with an inability to even open a bank account in America. The real estate markets are at a very, very stagnant level. And so across the broad dimensions of the economy, right, we're going to see prices go up, we're going to see wages go down, and we're going to see a fundamentally broken promise that was the core of the Trump campaign, which is that, hey, trust me, I'm competent, I'm successful, I know what I'm doing, and you're going to have more, not less. And by lived experience, that's going to become true, and it's going to be felt beginning in an acute way 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks out, right? So there's going to be a lot of long haul truck drivers with nothing to haul come the fall. There's going to be a lot of farmers with crops and nowhere to sell them. And there's going to be broken supply chains up and down the broad breadth of the economy, and a tourism collapse that's epic, worth tens and tens of billions of dollars to the American economy. And so some people say, well, that's coming, and it is, and that all we have to do is just sit back and do nothing, and people will say, us, not them, because they'll be responsible. And that's what the strategy should be. And you have all sorts of people that are on cable news stations, right, that have been affiliated with winning presidential campaigns from high to low levels that are espousing this wisdom. What do you say to that?
In theory, you're right. But I think we're at a point where people will not be simply satisfied, saying, oh, that's bad. They're responsible for what's happening. And very likely, the scenario could be quite, negative. I'm not sure that dire as you described, but definitely economy will not be Trump's friend in 2026. Is it enough for Democrats to win by default? I don't think so. I don't think so, because we still at the moment where the approval rating of Democrats is probably lower than the for Republicans. It's very low. There are too many mistakes being made. There's no trust. There's no confidence. You have to come up with a new narrative. You have to abandon far left policies that alienated millions and millions of Americans. And just, look at the Trump's propaganda. They always look at these policies. They want to discuss something that gives Trump, it's a better rating, like immigration or DEI or transgender issues. So it's time to stop, concentrating on cultural wars or on some other issues that we may, believe, that's they had to be somewhere just, on the front line. But that's not what we need. Economy, absolutely. But I still believe the constitutional factors are very, very important. Next year is 25th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And it's very important for us to point out that many fundamental things, many pillars of American democracy, many pillars of this great republic could be in danger. And for those who say, oh, we'll still win it. No, it's not just economy. It's not just, the news about economy or foreign affairs or whatever. It's about the spin. And don't forget, the social media is very much, just now on the Trump thumb. And you have, Twitter, X, and controlled by Elon Musk. And Fox is still the most powerful news generator in the country. And aside of these, of these obvious factors and their ability to generate pro-Trump energy in social media, let's ask one question. Before all these pundits that you mentioned say, oh, it's automatic. One question I keep asking. If, we are really facing, this is the kind of existential moment, so fateful moment in the history of the Republic, and Trump knows it's about his survival. Pam Bondi, the DOJ, Kash Patel, the head of FBI, will they follow Donald Trump's orders or defend the Constitution? I'm afraid we all know the answer. We're just afraid to ask this question. And that may change all equations. So that's why it's 2026 election is not automatic. Yes, fundamentals be on the side of those who are opposing Trump, but we need to have our eyes wide open to understand the dangers. And also we need a strong narrative that will not help Trump to use the weaknesses in the coalition and to portray this coalition as the promoters of the far left Marxist, theories, which they will do anytime, but they can call you or me Marxist. But that will not work as effectively as if they call people who are promoting these values. Yes, and of course, exposing Trump's corruption is it's mandatory. We have to do it every day. And of course, he will be doing, things that will expose him. But again, it's just not enough because Trump is bad. Trump is a threat to democracy. Trump is a villain. Trump is moron. It's not enough to bring back to our ranks and files those who departed the opposition last November.
So I agree that the constitutional issue is the core and fundamental issue, though all of these other things are happening at the same time. And at the core of everything, right, what we're talking about is fundamentally a question of right and wrong. And that is the divide between freedom and its opposite, which I do think is a question that we're going to be dealing with at the ballot in 2026. So we were talking earlier today, and you said to me in a way that caught my attention that 2026 is it, that this is an essential election for there to be a national repudiation and a check on Trump. We have talked about some of the problems, the lack of coherency in a message, the lack of trust and credibility amongst the leadership of the Democratic Party. So there is no presidential nominee. There is no sole point of leadership to gather around. So across a fragmented opposition, across a republic, with an officious, aggressive regime that is asserting its antipathy towards the Constitution in big ways and small, right? How should we think about the project of defense? And before we get into that, right, I want to talk about something very specific that happened today that you may or may not have seen, and that's Kristi Noem appearing before the House committee with Eric Swalwell. And Eric Swalwell, Congressman Swalwell, has a picture of Raul Abrego and the airbrushed MS-13 that Donald Trump talked about in the Oval Office. And he simply asked Kristi Noem, do you see the picture? And do you acknowledge this image is obviously airbrushed? And I think that this is an important question to ask. She's outrageously impertinent, disrespectful, refuses to answer the question, refuses like a child even to cast her gaze on the picture, but finally concedes after a farcical 5 minutes that, yeah, the image is concocted. So when I look at that, my question is, well, the next congressman who goes after Swalwell, who's a Democrat, I never really see any of them say, well, let me pick up where he left off. Right? Is the picture on the knuckles airbrushed or not? And to dig in and to hold the line on something that's, I think, an existential question of reality, because something's got to give when the truth and the lie meet in the ether. And so when you think about that exchange and you think about the farcical nature of it, how do you think about that as a political engagement where the truth and the lie meet in the context of that broader question?
Yeah, actually, I saw it. And I think it's very important that you mentioned it because that's a clear demonstration how strategy and tactics can work together. Because what he did today, it pushed Secretary Noem, it's to acknowledge the fake image used by President Trump. That's a good tactics, but it has an element of strategy, using the levers of power that are still available to us, and that's the United States Congress. both House and the Senate. Yes, Republicans are in charge there, but we cannot abandon them. And that's why the goal is to take at least one of them, most likely the House, back into the hands of those who will use these mechanisms before they become redundant. Because we are in a very, very precarious moment in American history where the true oligarchy, I said true, it's in the real meaning of this word, when there's no distinction anymore between power and money. Because Rockefeller was not an oligarch in the purest term of this word, or J.P. Morgan, or Carnegie, or even Bezos, or Zuckerberg. Elon Musk is. Donald Trump is. So that's those who control both the money and directly, not through buying influence, but directly controls levels of power. We have to make sure that some of these levels of power will be taken away from them. And the first one is the United States Congress, the House. And it's not much. So you need three Republicans to shift sides, or you need win these three or more seats. It's doable. And I think it's very important to raise the temperature, to put more pressure on the Republicans. They have to feel that, that's eventually they will have to make a choice between loyalty to Trump and their voters. That's why everything that is happening on the floor of the House or on the floor of the Senate, it's the most important action now. And that's why I'm very reluctant to suggest that the Democrats should look for a candidate for 2028. You cannot jump over, because looking for a leader for 2028 means division. Now we need unity, because we have to, again, take the levers of power in 2026. If Donald Trump controls the House after 2026 elections, midterm elections, I think we can forget about 2028. They will never ratify whatever result is. So key is 2026. This is our project. And it's a project of guaranteeing that America will will have a privilege of having free and fair elections. And I can tell you that they will do absolutely everything to control the process in 2026. That's why now we have to build the momentum. And every time the Democrats like Congressman Swalwell or others expose these lies, demonstrate that the members of Trump administration, his nominees, prefer loyalty, blunt loyalty to Trump, to facts, to truths, to the interests of American people. That's gold.
Do you think it's really important that there be an organization that lifts up what I would say are the fighting Democrats? And I'll give you a couple of names of people that I think are important in this moment. Chris Murphy, from Connecticut in the United States Senate. Cory Booker, from the United States Senate. There's a governor candidate in New Jersey who I think will be elected, Mikey Sherrill. Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. Jocelyn Benson in Michigan. You have Jason Crow of the
Colorado
Army
6,
Rangers
Colorado
from
6, yeah.
Colorado. You have Jake Auchincloss from the state of Massachusetts. You have a wide range of younger candidates and members of Congress. AOC is out there, but right, to what you were saying earlier, I see a person saying AOC, yes, a leader, but if you have a huge rally where there's huge cheers that go up when the Palestinian flag is thrown over the American flag, I'm not on board with that, everybody, and I'm not getting in line. And you can have 10,000 people or 150,000 people at that rally shouting me down, and shouting a lot of people in the country down, which is one of the lessons from 4 years ago when people tried to talk about the obvious but got shouted down on the cable news shows, shouted down in the congressional caucuses, shouted down everywhere. So all the people who were great at shouting down, I would suggest that Garry Kasparov is right about that listening, right, is an important skill. in politics, more listening, less talking. And so in a coalition, right, that's going to come together in 2026, it means winning seats in places like Montana that may not be up for the agenda of the Democratic Socialists who are popular in Brooklyn and the Bronx. And the problem is that you have a fair number of people that want to impose what is someone's belief here, but doesn't really fit over here. And there's a word for that, and the word is intolerance. And so the Democratic Party has an intolerance problem for a broad perspective of American opinion that can agree that we want to live in a free country under the US Constitution. And so that's the coalition that's got to come together. But my question is, right, how do you give expression to the voices of millions, right, when the leadership of the Democratic Party, with all of their power, walks into a room and points at Chuck Schumer and says, that's our guy? Because, for example, he doesn't inspire me and I don't want to follow him anywhere. And I don't want to burn any money giving him more of it to misspend on an election. So what do we do? What's the nature of the problem as we think about an opposition that can be meaningful in 26?
Look, one of the Trump's problems is age. How can you go after Trump with his age if you have Schumer and Pelosi around? So, for God's sake, I grew up in the Soviet Union, and we had so many jokes about our Politburo. But the average age of Brezhnev's Politburo was under 68 years. When Gorbachev was elected Politburo, he was just 49, I think. So Brezhnev died, at 75. And this is and we were making jokes, this is, look at these people, they're too old. So yeah, of course, medicine is better now. It's America, not Soviet Union, but still, it's just, if we want to expose Trump, so we have to bring new people in. So yes, with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, okay, Pelosi is not officially a leader, but we know who's calling the shot there. So we need new names, new faces, fresh blood. You mentioned many of them. They're just some of them under 50, some of them just over 50, but that's what's needed. The Democratic Party has to go through a process of renewal, and it's too slow. It's just, they don't want to go away. So it's wrong. It is wrong. And again, you can't convince people, but if you have the same faces around, you have to show that's a new party. Whether this two-party system is still functioning properly, it's a big open question. But right now, we don't have time to build a third party. But Democrats must recognize that, it's their last chance to rebuild it's the whole structure and to come up with a big coalition. And also, just if you look at the most successful Democratic presidents, so just back, so that's in 20th century, you have two governors. Okay, Obama is a separate story, but Clinton and Carter. So there's two Democrats who are governors in the red states. So you just have to look for different kind of a candidate. And again, is it possible? Yes, absolutely. You can mention Shapiro, you can mention Bashar. I mean, you have a lot of people. You can look for some top, military brass. So like Admiral McCraven, some great people that could inspire confidence, and also to be patriotic. We should not let Donald Trump and his cronies to run on the campaign of American patriotism. It's not America first, it's Donald Trump first. But in order to expose it, just to show that it's just words and nothing behind it, we need to offer a proper alternative that will inspire people and will make Trump look bad.
So there are two institutions, right, that have outsized importance that the American people get a vote on. One is in the U.S. Senate, one is the U.S. House, and in a perfect world, both of them are held by Democratic control. Part of the problem is that in the U.S. Senate, Democrats have disinvested over 40 years from 80% of the landmass of the country. And the consequence of that is that we have states that the Democratic Party relates to as if they're not part of the United States, like, for example, Iowa, where Joni Ernst, for 157 different reasons, should be a very eminently beatable candidate because of her many hypocrisies. But put her aside for a second. That as a strategic matter, right? If there's one lifeboat and you can only save the House or the Senate, all the senators are going to drown, and we're going to try to save the House because that is the more inviting hill to climb and to take and to seize. And the House, right, which has a very narrow MAGA majority, is vulnerable to falling. And so
Uh,
when you look at the House, right, and taking it in 2026, the campaign committee that will control the majority of the funding and the strategy is run by the same people who've run it every year and are the architects of a disaster in Washington, D.C. So when you think about the strategy in the moment, which seems to me is that you need people, right, to run in these districts as either Democrats, right, or independents, right? And I say Democrats because we have a two-party system, and that's a vehicle. It's like a car. It's better to be in the car than the horse and buggy, but could run as an independent in some of them as well. But that there has to be a grassroots movement that gives weight and support or creates a counterweight to these Washington, D.C. committees to support ordinary people who will go to Washington to set things right. Because if you can't do that, I don't know how you create the critical mass, right, to have an alternative that offers better. Because in the end, right, the election of two rival gangs in a competitive cycle of retribution against one another only accretes to the benefit of the fascist in this case, which is the stronger and dominant genetic side of the American character in this debate. We'll never have a dictatorship of the far left in the United States. We'll have a fascist government, right, in response to the fear of a far left dictatorship, which is part of the understanding of Trump's propaganda that's broadly missing in a lot of the media.
okay, let's let you. You said many things, and I just let me start. Just taking one by one because some of the things are very, very important, and they're strategically important. They're historically important. Let's start with what you said about MAGA majority. There is no MAGA majority. MAGA never has majority of the country. They have, I don't know, 30, 35%, but the rest of the majority for GOP comes from people who believe this is a lesser evil. Because if we look at the history, and again, you made historical reference. So MAGA, fascism, far right populism, authoritarianism always came after the left as a response to this threat from the left. First communist, then fascist. But historically, the fascist fraction of the society was always bigger. It's easier for people. They say law and order, so that the communism is too many fantasies. So MAGA Vogue is about the same correlations as Nazi communist in Weimar Republic. So MAGA is 30%, Vogue is 15%. MAGA always wins, beats Vogue, but MAGA is not a majority. It's very important for us not to let MAGA use Vogue to get to majority. So when we look at the composition of the House or the Senate, MAGA is not there just dominating. MAGA is terrorizing the rest. And they're cowards. They don't know how to grow the spine. But senators that you mentioned, I'm sure Ernst, she tried to, or she said she would maybe vote against Hexas. But they're terrorized. When Elon Musk says, I would spend $10 million for the primary, and because of gerrymandering, we know that primaries in many states, in many congressional districts, they simply decide the outcome of the elections. So they're terrorized. They don't know how to fight against it. So we have various options, actually two strategies here. One is we could say, okay, fine. So let's create, an organization that could protect the vulnerable Republicans, saying if Musk raises 10 million, we can match it. We'll bring money, but you have to, but on one condition, you vote for a conscience, not for the country, not for the party. Again, that's questionable. Second one is make sure that they own it. You go after them, yes, Iowa is not a blue state. It's not even a purple state. But Ernst is vulnerable, and of course, the economy, as you mentioned, could be a factor. But make sure that people in the states, whether it's Iowa, Ernst, she is running for elections 2026. Whether it's Tillis, North Carolina, that's much closer. That's purple. Whether it's Cornyn in Texas, it's also not one-sided. It's 53-47, typically, they split there. It's not red state yet. So make sure that people know that those are not Trump tariffs, but Ernst tariffs, Tillis tariffs, Cornyn tariffs. Every time you have a scandal, it's not, Donald Trump nominated and pushed through Hexes, who was just, was a joke as a head of DOD. Ernst voted for him. Tillis voted for him. Cornyn voted for him. Make them own it. And of course, you can do the same with members of the House. And then maybe at one point, they'll start scratching their heads and just thinking, oh, God knows. You have Elon Musk and Trump on one side, but you have voters on the other side. So it's about combined pressure. As of today, I don't see any strategy that could lead to forcing these Republicans, vulnerable Republicans, to reconsider their blind loyalty to Trump, which is very much based on terror and their fear and lack of civic courage to defend the country against the narrow party interest.
So I think that there's two lines that matter in this debate, right? And most of the attention is on the line to the front, which is that place where MAGA meets the rest of us. And in front of us, right, is the Democratic Congress led by Chuck Schumer. And I think there has to be a line drawn behind them that is reminiscent of Marshal Stalin's order at Stalingrad, which is not one more step backwards.
Yeah, order 229, right. Summer 1942, yes.
Right. So I mean this in the sense that there's a lack of fear of Democrats by the Democratic leaders at the expense of the fear they feel towards MAGA. And that's got to be inversed, and the expectation reset that there's an expectation that you don't give an inch here. And so from a strategic perspective, right, if you were to walk in a room and talk to these people, right, I think the first thing to express to them, right, and I want to talk about what's the best way to communicate this, right, because there's platforms that can aggregate many millions of views, this, yours, and it's this, is that the moment requires a maximalist response in the use of the Article 1 powers of the Constitution, which is a co-equal branch of government, to say no and to stop and to assert all powers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, make every second of every minute of every hour as painful as it is possible to make it to get anything done, while simultaneously demanding the immediate accounting for all of our data, which has been seized, stolen, hijacked, and sold to whom and where, God knows. But a demand that this happen, and the use of power righteously asserted to demand that these things happen, and to put it before the voters, and to put everything under a frame of right and wrong, and to insist that in this country that we follow the Constitution, right? And I think you can't make that argument without accompanying it with the maximalist approach because Trump is heading to a place where he will assert the powers of the state against the right of dissent before very much longer.
Absolutely. But you have to understand that this is an existential threat, the existential threat. And I think a lot of people, we just talked about it 30 minutes ago, they think that, okay, 2026 will somehow they'll regulate the balance, and the voters will see it and they will shift, from Trump back to Democrats. It's not going to be automatic. So we have to fight every day. And unfortunately, looking at Schumer or just other Democrats, they don't inspire confidence. So they're not fighting there. They just play the same games. This is not the same game. This is not about, making concessions here, negotiating. You don't negotiate with those who want to abandon the Constitution. And we're not even hiding it. It's the Congress now, just under, definitely the House, under leadership of Johnson. I don't know, can I call it leadership? So it's now turned into an extension of executive office. And Senator Thune also shows very little sign of independence. So we just have to demand that, it's an equal branch of power of the government. Actually, it's Article 1 of the Constitution. You have to remind them every day, just, make them feel uncomfortable. That's what Trump has been doing. And he was very good at that. He's still good at that. And they put pressure all the time. And the other side, again, is just, maybe it's not wrong. Forget maybe. It's damn wrong, It's a corruption. It's a blatant corruption. Yes, absolutely. It's very important to find courage to say yes. Unfortunately, we had previous administration that was not clear on these issues, neither on moral issues nor on corruption. But again, it's in the past. Yes, guilty as charged. But look at here. Look what's happening. Those who were shouting about Hunter Biden receiving $50,000 a month from Ukrainian company. Okay, fine, you got it. How about Jared Kushner receiving $2 billion? Yeah. So let's talk about those who are in power today. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I see a big argument now going around now. How about, what's wrong, with Trump receiving this mega jet, $400 million, while many American universities who are known for their anti-Israeli, pro-Hamas position, received tons of money from Qatar. The answer is, these institutions, these colleges, they're private. I disagree with what they're doing. I think it's wrong to receive money from Qatar, but they cannot tax me, you, me, others. They cannot, subsidize. They cannot, interfere with our lives. If I don't want my kid to go there, just to Harvard, it can go to Columbia or whatever. So we still have choices in this country. But we don't have a choice if we have a government that is openly receiving bribes from foreign powers, and this government has power over our lives, whether it's taxes, whether it's a law. It's a very long list, especially with those like Pambondi and Kash Patel, who are very prevalent with the law and application of the law.
The most egregious person who appears before the Congress is Kristi Noem. And I'm an alumni at a staff level.
I think this is a very tough competition.
Right.
So maybe she's the winner, but I think Kash Patel could
offer her, right? There's
a good push,
Right. There's a bunch of them, right, that are all competing for the podium, and I wanted to conclude this last couple minutes to role play with you a little bit and imagine the scenario that we are special government employees of the committee staff, and we're walking back into the chambers in the back of the committee room, right, in the private spaces, to talk about what's just went on. And honestly, I've been there. I've had these experiences in my career, and typically I don't find myself at a loss of words to say. But when it comes to Kristi Noem, I'm genuinely at a loss of words, and I would begin the conversation. I'd say, "Well, Garry, what what do we ask her on the next round here?" Right? Because obviously, right, I ask her what the color blue looks like, right? And I hold up, right, blue dot, red dot. She's going to tell me to go fuck myself in so many words, and Trump loves it. And right, I have a statutory responsibility, constitutional responsibility, right, and I have the power to oversight her, and she refuses, right, to answer a question, refuses to show any respect to the elected representatives of the American people, just full on impersonator, right, of either a cult follower or think of her as. What do you do, right, in the next questioning with somebody who brings in the attitude of a Kash Patel, who brings in the attitude of a Christy Nome? I mean, she's involved romantically with Corey Lewandowski. It's an open affair. It's an open secret. It's been reported in dozens of media around the world. They live across from each other. Of course, the taxpayers are subsidizing that. I would ask her about that, right, for 5 minutes. But there has to be an approach, right, that confronts the animus with the appropriate level of reciprocal something. What, how do you think about that confrontation? Because the meaning of these confrontations is going to increase as the level of confrontation and aggression of the administration increases, right? So she will only be strengthened, right, in the service of the lie as this goes forward
Yeah, I
on the
mean,
current pace.
yeah, it's the, let's say that it's the, every administration before Trump also could be caught on lying, but there are lies and lies. But this time, it's not just about lies, it's about contempt. They just, they lie. They know that we know they're lying, and they take pride of it because it's not about responding to American people, or to, in this case, to representatives of American people, which means talking to the nation that elected these representatives. But it's a show for one man only, to show loyalty, and he's arrogant. So they also want to be very arrogant. So they believe they can stop answering questions. They can show the contempt. They can just laugh just at our faces, even if they're being caught with their lies. I mean, for instance, with Kash Patel, I mean, we know he was a special consultant for Qatar, for the government of Qatar. We still don't know how much money he got from Qatar and what he has been doing with Qatar. So it's an FBI director. It's known for being a consultant for main sponsor of terrorism, and
The
we don't
attorney
know
general was a Qatari agent. She's a
exactly.
registered agent of
Absolutely. So
Qatar.
somehow everything goes to Qatar. So but it's this: we don't have power to force them to answer. And again, it's about levers of power. The Republicans, they control the House. Yes, it's only three votes, but so far I don't see how we're going to get 3 votes. I believe that psychologically, knowing these kind of people, there will be no 3 Republicans shifting sides. There will be 30 or none. So it's not 3-4. There should be a big bunch of them. And now, following what you just said 10 minutes ago, you have to put pressure on them. They have to know that they own it, that every lie that is being said there, it's part of them, and them, being cowards, not fulfilling their responsibilities, escaping, or just running away from the town halls. It will haunt them. They'll pay the price for it. So they have to know that not far away, it's very soon, they have to make a choice between blind loyalty to Donald Trump and American voters that will remember them. But it has to be a campaign. It should be on a daily basis. It should have energy. Energy is very important. That's how Trump and Vance won, because they had energy, and looking at Harris and Waltz, there was no energy. So it's very important that we show that there's energy to fight for what we believe is right. And you don't get it with Schumer, Pelosi, and the rest.
So I think that when you look ahead, how do you see the summer unfurling? Take us into the future here. There's always that day in the fall, comes in late September, October, where summer's over, right?
Um,
The autumn here, will we be in autumn as a country?
Look, Trump is in office for less than 4 months. Less than 4 months. So that's why we are not talking about years. We're not talking about months. We're talking about every week, if not every day, that can change the evaluations. And Donald Trump shows no sign of slowing down. So that's he's doubling down every day, every week. So what do I expect is that it's very likely that Supreme Court will tell hard no to Trump on one of the issues. I guess there are many cases, dozens and dozens of cases already there. They will not look at all of them, but they'll take few of them, and maybe on the birth rights, citizenship birth rights. Maybe on some other cases, there will be no. Now, the moment Trump faces Supreme Court unequivocal no, what he will do, likely he will tell go to hell. It's maybe, but if the moment comes when Trump defies open the Supreme Court, which I think it's, I don't know, likely, call it 50-50, then we are going just straight into the depths of the constitutional crisis. Because Supreme Court has to ask Congress, the House and the Senate, to respond. And I believe in this case, Johnson and Thune will run to the White House begging Trump to reconsider. And there's a good chance Trump will tell them also go to hell. And then we are, just it's digging deeper and deeper into constitutional crisis. Insurrection Act, Trump contemplated it back in 2019, 2020. I mean, it's with Texas in charge, Kash Patel and Bondi. So I don't know or know him, who will stop him from doing such things. And don't forget, Trump has few international claims: Greenland, Panama, maybe Mexico. He already mentioned that he could go after cartels. Okay, let's set aside Canada for a moment. Greenland, Panama, and potential operation against cartels. Those things that might be very much on Trump's agenda in the next 3-4 months. So that's why I think the summer could be very, very hot. And if economy is not improving, though I don't think it will be as tragic as you described, so we may see some serious clashes. And again, I think this year might be, a very important one, if not decisive one. But definitely next year. Next year, that should be our goal. We have to have our aim is to make sure that by the beginning of next year, there will be a powerful coalition that will send a clear message, a very distinct message to every Republican in the House, in the Senate. I said every GOP member, not necessarily MAGA, but those who still have room for maneuver, that they have to choose. And if they make a wrong choice, they will be kicked out, not by Elon Musk or Donald Trump, but American voters.
I couldn't agree more. There's going to have to be a powerful coalition that comes together that can project real strength, real power, raise $100 million with low dollar donations, where people can come together, draw a hard line, and reach across the country and elect people to put a stop to the insanity. I just want to thank you so much for joining, to having a conversation, that just reading the comments. I think so many people fascinated to hear you talk and really get to see how you see the world, such an honest voice and experience, and having seen this before. One of the things that I'll conclude is that we are in the 250th anniversary year of the founding of the United States of America. And it's an extraordinary story. There is no day that passes between this and July 4th of 2026 that does not have meaning right? That was not existential, when everything that was to come after wasn't just really moments away from being extinguished, when what they called the cause is hopeless. And one of the stories that is commensurate to this moment is the 200th anniversary of the Marquis de Lafayette's farewell tour of the United States, as he travels the country. And there's a real crisis in the country. Andrew Jackson may or may not concede the election, which he does in front of Lafayette in New York City. Lafayette visits the Harlem Free School, where his friend Alexander Hamilton has played a key role in the founding. He execrates slavery, and Lafayette travels the country. He really reawakens a spirit in the people, a gratitude, and he sails home. And the ship is rechristened the Brandywine after the battle that he bled at for America's independence. And off to France, Lafayette goes. And and on the 250th anniversary of the country will be 200 years away, right, from this moment on the 50th anniversary of the country, that Adams and Jefferson, who were the best of friends and closest of partners in the cause, whose relationship is torn apart by politics and difference, are reconciled in the end, and they die hours apart on July 4th, 2026, in the
1826.
1826, in the aftermath, right? 200 years on will be 2026. And the American people look at this event with awe, right? That this can't conceivably be a coincidence. And so when you look at the country, when you look at the 250th anniversary, um, we have to consider, right, the possibility that a new king has not appeared suddenly and without accident, right? A proposition that's not a new one is being tested again, right? And this is what happens when people get power, right? And so all of this is academic. And then one day you get a Carolyn Levitt who gets a taste of power, and you see the zealotry in the eyes, and you see the gleam, right? You see it in all of their eyes, and you see the arrogance, and you see the taking. And you can appreciate anew all of the warnings that have been passed down and all of the wisdom that's been accumulated as we see clearly what's clearly in front of us. And what's in front of us is certainly very clear. And Garry Kasparov helped make it clearer tonight. And I appreciate it. And Gary, I just want to hand it over to you to take us home and say goodnight to everybody and close it out with any wisdom you might have as we move forward into another day in America, as the sun breaks over the Cadillac Mountain off the coast of Maine, and we have a new day ahead.
Look, you mentioned the great experiment started 250 years ago, and it's not only in this country that people kept this day in awe. I grew up on the other side of Iron Curtain and always looked at America as a beacon of hope and a fortress of freedom. And still, even with Donald Trump and all the wrongdoings here in America today, still hundreds of millions, likely billions of people, still viewing America as the best hope for freedom. So, as a defender, as the guardian of freedom against tyranny in this never-ending battle, and so we just we have responsibility of defending it. And so I can remind listeners about the motto of my Substack, The Next Move: stop whining, start winning. And the winning starts with strategy. Let's discuss it. Let's find it the best optimal strategy, and let's implement it, and to make sure that we'll be victorious next year.
The Next Move, Garry Kasparov, thank you very much. And thank you to all of you for joining. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning. I invite you to join this community where I promise to be honest, blunt, and direct about what is happening in this country. America is in crisis. Follow and subscribe to this channel and on Substack. Thank you.